going, everyone? Welcome back to my channel. In this video, I'm going to show you how I made a monster glove out of a pair of just standard sort of nylon stockings like this. Not this pair because, spoilers, I already did it using different ones than this, but you get the idea. Let's hop right into it. So for this project, I had a few pairs of nylons to choose from. So I had a bunch of leftover nylons from my days being in the Future Farmers of America. For those of you who are familiar, you might remember your dress uniform requiring the girlies to wear nylons. And so I ultimately decided to use this more opaque pair. And here you're seeing me do something that is not going to work. But I decided to include it in this video just in case anyone was curious about these methods. So here I'm putting on the nylons and sort of marking in between the spaces of my fingers to make sort of a template to go off of. And I was pressing the marker all the way through so I can see the dots on the other side, so I can kind of trace around it and get more solid lines. Once I had that done, I took it off and I was going to sew on those lines, while the glove was off of my hand. That was 2 hours of work that ended up looking something like this once it was all sewn up. And here was sort of the moment of truth where I was like, okay, I'm gonna slide my hand into the little sewn cavities to see to see if it would work. And then I was like, okay, and then once it's on my hand, I'll spread my little fingies out so I can cut the space in between. I was like, oh, maybe I'll cut it now and that'll help me get the glove on easier. This was a colossal failure. But sometimes you have to discover the 1,000 incorrect ways to make a light bulb. So instead I had to pivot to a much more difficult method, which involved putting the nylons over my hands and then just sewing around each of my fingers individually. To get the stitch started, I doubled up my thread and tied one end and then passed my needle through the sort of doubled up loop on the other side of the fabric to sort of create a knot around the nylon instead of relying on the knot to just catch itself and not be pulled through the fabric, if that makes sense. And once I had that started, I just went back and forth and sewed as I typically would. There may be a better stitch for doing this. I don't know. I only really know one stitch. And if you're ever planning on doing this, I would recommend perhaps doing it in different sittings because this was very difficult on my wrist and forearm because I had to stretch my hands against the constriction of the nylon, and these ones, it was tight and it was uncomfortable, but you know what? You do what you gotta do for the art of it. Once I got to the end of the finger, I sort of wrapped the thread over the top to sort of pull it down taut around the tip of my finger. Once I had the sides of each of these fingers sewn, I cut the connecting bit of nylon in the center. And then I just continued this process for every single space in between my fingers. And the more fingers I had free, the easier the process got because I wasn't feeling so claustrophobic and restricted. And I don't know, but there is full well the possibility that nylon gloves are something you could just purchase. And I was putting myself through a lot of difficulty for potentially nothing. But here's the thing, I didn't have money to buy new things, so I was just trying to make what I already had work for me. Sometimes I would end up with these gaps in between the fingers of like where the stitches just didn't quite meet up all the way. And so for all those gaps, I just went back through and just re-stitched them, you know, individually, just to make sure that things were as sturdy as I could make them. Creating the space between the index finger and the thumb was a little bit trickier because it wasn't as straightforward of like just going up and down like it was for the other fingers. So I just followed the shape of my hand the best I could to create the sort of thumb space. The thumb was probably the most difficult part to like put, you know, like take on and off when putting the glove on. But I just did the best I can. And for this project in particular, I really lucked out because the actor that I got to be, did I even mention? I don't know if I mentioned. I'm doing this because this past weekend, I filmed a music video that I needed a creature for. And so I got a buddy of mine to be the creature in my music video. And luckily, we have very similar sized hands, so I was able to just use my own hand as the model for making this glove. So if you're trying to make this to fit somebody, you kind of need it to be the exact shape of their hand, otherwise it won't quite fit. Once that space was all sewn up, I trimmed off the excess nylon just as I did with the other fingers. And with that, the base of the glove was complete and I was finally able to release myself from my nylon prison. The process of getting the glove flipped right side out was a little bit difficult, and I had to be kind of careful with it because this isn't the, you know, most robust and sturdy material to work with. So I just worked as carefully as I could and used the tip of a marker to kind of push the fingers right side out. Here I debated briefly on making a second glove, but quickly realized it would not work because A, I was running out of time, B, I would have had to use my non-dominant hand to sew it onto my dominant hand because whatever way you sew it, like you cannot flip these gloves back and forth. They only will fit one way. So if you're doing this and want to make two, you'd either have to borrow someone else's hand or like use a mannequin or be ambidextrous, and I had none of those things available to me. So with that in mind, we're just gonna go ahead and complete the glove that we do have. So I'm using a pair of press-on nails I had left over from a different costume, and I'm taking a silicone thimble that I use when I'm like working with hot glue, and I'm putting that on my thumb and using that to protect my skin so that I can just glue the nails directly onto my fingers. I quickly realized that this is not the most efficient way to do this, but we'll get to that in a second. It worked well enough for the first couple of fingers, but the process of taking the glove on and off with the silicone thing on was so annoying. So for the final three, I just used a marker as a stand-in to hold the shape of what my finger would be, and I glued them on that way. Once I had all the nails glued on, I tried the glove back on and realized that it's not really giving creature, it's just kind of diva. So I decided that the nails needed a little bit of an extension. So for that, I'm using a piece of construction paper and I'm just tracing out a vague nail shape to serve as my claws. Once I had those all traced and cut out, I used the end of a marker to be a sort of guide to help me pre-curve the nails so I could glue them on to the fake nails easier. Once I had those pre-curved, I went ahead and glued them onto the nails like halfway down the nail so that I can get the most, length out of it while still remaining kind of sturdy. Speaking of sturdiness, I used the hot glue and just coated the entire nail with it. That way it would have like that plasticky sort of durability that just plain construction paper would not. I'm missing a little bit of footage, but I also coated the back as well. After I had all the nails glued on, I went in with some acrylic paint to create this sort of gradient from the tips of my fingers down my hand to create more of a creaturey look. And this is the reason why I wanted to use, normal nude nylons for this instead of just gluing nails onto like a normal long glove, because I want to still be able to see some of the flesh color underneath, so it sort of gives this illusion like it's the skin that's being affected instead of just like you're wearing a glove with nails on it, if that makes sense. Another question that you might be asking is, Randy, why didn't you just like make the nails and then glue the nails onto your actor and then use makeup to achieve this effect on his normal real hands? And the answer is, one, I did not have the makeup to do that, but I did have these things. And two, there were a few things that he's going to be doing the video that I didn't want to get makeup on my windowsill, okay? I'm sorry. And I just figured this would be easier, and if we need to like do reshoots, we could just like slide the glove back on and it would just be, ready to go. I'll take a moment while I'm painting this glove to say that if you watched this far and you liked this video, consider liking it. It really helps me out a lot. And if you want to see more things from me, consider subscribing. I have a lot of fun things planned, including releasing the music video I was working on. And I'll be real, I'm just gonna do it on this channel because it's the channel that I have monetized, and I'm putting a lot of effort into it, so I kind of want it to be somewhere where I already have subscribers. So don't worry, I don't have like a lot of music things planned. I just, every once in a while I want to share the other artistic things that I do, and I think the video is coming out pretty cool. So if you want to see it, it'll be here, and if you don't want to watch it, you don't have to, but I do other stuff. I do stuff. I'm allowed to do stuff that's not just dolls, right? Right? Once everything was painted, I kept the glove on while it was drying to like sort of keep things from spreading around too much. I eventually busted out the hairdryer, but for a minute I just waggled my arm around. Once the fabric of the glove was all painted, I went in and painted the claws black. I could have done something maybe a little more detailed, but because of the roughness of the hot glue, I just figured black would be a nice way to even it out. And I also had to pop some of the nails off and rough up the surface and re-glue them on because they just wouldn't stay on. But I got that fixed, and here's the glove. It doesn't look as good on me as it does on Nick. Honestly, I didn't even really like how it looked that much until he put it on and I saw the whole ensemble together, and honestly, it looked great on camera, and that's what really matters for something like this. And you know what? It held up to a day of filming and even doing some really goofy stuff with it. So, you know what? That's it for this video. I hope to see y'all next time. Love you, bye!